Hello, everyone, and welcome to Betting 101 with Minty Bets and Teddy Covers. This week, along with the next couple weeks, we're just going to go over betting terminology. We've got about 60 terms to go over, and we'll break down each of them alphabetically, doing about 20-ish words per week. It'll be quick and informative. Before we get started, Teddy, please explain to our viewers why it's important to know these terms and understand them.
Well, when it comes to the culture of sports betting, okay, using the terminology correctly is key. You know, a movie called a couple years back called Lay the Favorite. Remember, it had Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck. Big stars. It was a dud.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
was a dud in part because nobody says lay the favorite. Okay, that's not the terminology people use. It didn't sound natural. So I know there are many bettors that are really getting involved for the first time. Just like I was when I moved to Vegas in '98. I didn't know 90% of these terms when I moved out.
Yeah.
To use these terms effectively and correctly, you just sound like you know what you're talking about. It's something that everyone who bets on sports wants to be doing. So what we're going to do today, again, we're going to go through 20 terms today, 20 more next week, 20 more the week after that. And we'll go through them, talk about what they mean, how to use it in a sentence, so you can sound knowledgeable when you're using your sports betting terms instead of sounding like an idiot.
Exactly. So let us get started with the A's. Teddy, added game. That is the first word on my list here. Added game.
Well, yeah, added game or the added board. Those are games that are not part of the regular rotation. Usually they're rescheduled games. Sometimes the second game of a doubleheader or a game that got rained out or a game that got postponed. They'll go on what's called the added board or an added game. The limits are the same, but they just weren't part of the regular rotation prior to the game being postponed. Now, I'm going to note here, added game is not the same as an extra game. There's an added board and an extra board. The extra board tends to be for smaller conferences in college football and college hoops that don't, so the limits are lower on the extra board. They're the same on the added board. It's just a game that's been added to the rotation.
Gotcha. Simple enough. Next term, against the spread.
Well, we got to use them in a sentence, Minty. You want to use it in a sentence or me?
You can go.
So instead of, I played the second game of the doubleheader on the added board today. That's how you use it in a sentence. All right.
Oh, yes. Oh, we're still in added game. Yes. Very good. Okay. So you're going to break it down and you're going to give us a sentence.
You got to give some of the sentences too, you know.
I know. I just woke up from a nap. I'm sorry. Okay. So the next term, against the spread.
Yeah, against the spread, or ATS is how it's usually abbreviated, and that's key. ATS. What's their record? Nobody cares what their straight up record is, how many wins and losses they have.
Yeah.
Care about what their record is, ATS, against the spread. What have they done their last 5 games, ATS? The market's been overvaluing this team or undervaluing this team. So we talk about your straight up record, SU. ATS record is what bettors are interested in, and ATS results. It's not whether you win or lose the game straight up. It's whether you win or lose the game against the spread. And that, of course, has to do with if you're laying points or taking points. We'll talk about that as we move forward.
Okay. Do you have a sentence for us?
Yeah. So Cleveland Cavaliers went 0-7 ATS as a favorite prior to the season getting shut down.
Beautiful. Next term, backdoor cover. People think this is a dirty term, okay? So get your heads out of your back door. It's not dirty. Teddy, tell us what backdoor cover means.
Sure. A backdoor cover is when a team scores late in the game, usually when the underdog scores late in the game to get under the point spread. Let's say the team is a 7-point favorite. They've been in control of the game throughout. They're winning by 12. There's 2 minutes left. And the quarterback comes in, bing, 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 punch them down in the end zone. They end up winning by 5. The underdog just came through the back door. They got a backdoor cover against the favorite. That means the last game of the last score of the game came for the dog, for the underdog, in order to get under the number or within the number. That's how you get a backdoor cover. So I couldn't believe it. The Chiefs were covering for 58 minutes of that game, and lo and behold, the Raiders came through the back door.
Yes, beautiful. Love it. Term number 4, bankroll. Very important here.
So, and this is of all the terms, this might be the most important because the bankroll is the money you have to bet with.
Yes.
And when it comes to bankroll, you're going to hear this 1,000 times if you watch these type of videos or you read you want to keep your sports betting money separate from everything else. Your bankroll is money that is specifically allocated to be betting on sports, whether it's $100, $50, $20, $20,000. Your bankroll is the total amount of money that you have put aside specifically for betting sports, not money that you need to pay your bills this month, not money that you need to buy your engagement ring for your girlfriend. Your bankroll is your bankroll.
Yeah.
Exactly. So here's your sentence. I blew half my bankroll last night. I wasn't thinking, and I doubled and tripled and quadrupled my wagers, and I got my ass kicked.
Damn, Eddie. Yeah. Good one. I like it. Okay, number 5, bookmaker.
A bookmaker's so there's a nuance between bookmaker and odds maker. Okay. An odds maker is someone in theory who helps the bookmakers make their lines. But the reality is that, you're splitting hairs, odds maker, bookmaker. Bookmaker is someone that's taking your action, whether it is a local bookie, whether it is a casino sports book, whether it is offshore, whatever it is. The bookmaker is the guy who's setting the number and who's taking your action. So I kicked my bookmaker's ass all weekend. I won every bet that I made.
Love it. Okay, number 6, buy points. What does it mean to buy points?
So anytime you're looking at a point spread, okay, and again, a point spread is the mathematical differential between two teams in any given ball game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But anytime you're looking at a point spread on your app or in a sports book or wherever, you have the option to buy points at most books. They'll charge you anywhere between 10 and 25 cents, depending on what point it is you want to buy. We'll talk about that when it comes to key numbers. But so if the line is -2 everywhere, and you say, I want that line to be -1.5, you can buy the half point. And instead of laying -110, you usually be laying -120 or -125 in the buy half point situations. I basically never recommend that people buy points if you're capable of shopping for lines, if you have multiple books that you can work with, and you have the ability to line shop throughout the course of the day or the week, whether it's, baseball, football, basketball, day or week. If you have more than one book and the ability to line shop, you never should want to buy points because you're paying an extra price. But to do so every time you lose, it's not going to cost you 11 to win 10. It's going to cost you 12 or 12.5 or 13 to win 10.
Yeah.
Using the sentence, I was thinking about buying points to get the Colts up to +3, but I shopped around and found that line later in the week anyway without buying points.
Love it. Perfect. I was just going to ask if you recommend to buy points, and you said no. So that answers my question that I didn't even get to ask. Next term is chalk. Kelly uses this term all the time.
You can ask it anyway. It's
yes.
Even if I already answered it, just ask it again and again.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. All right. Next term, chalk.
The chalk is the favorite in any given game, and the favorite is the team that is mathematically the superior of the two squads. In a game where two teams are even, the chalk will be the home team, or even in some situations where one team is a little bit better, like a power rated a point better, the chalk will still be the home team. But the bottom line is chalk equals the favorite in any given game, and oftentimes beginning bettors, especially in sports like baseball, they get in trouble because they're playing favorites and laying heavy chalk game in, game out. So, and using the sentence, I played all chalk in MLB last night and I got my butt kicked. Next time I'm going to look for some dogs with some value.
Okay, perfect. Number 8, the closing line. Define closing line, Teddy.
Well, you can't define closing line without talking about opening line because they're
okay.
But the definitions for A and B make perfect sense. The closing line is the line when the game kicks off or tips off or the first pitch is thrown, and that's the line you see in all the sports books, and that's a line that the game is going to be graded against when you look at your databases. the closing line.
Yep.
However, the lines don't open with the closing line necessarily.
Correct.
The markets, it's a dynamic marketplace. Okay, so the lines move throughout the course of the day or the week. Your opening line is where a sportsbook opens, and your closing line is where a sportsbook closes for any given ball game. So the opening line on the Eagles was -7, but nobody bet Philly all week. They closed -4.
Love it. Thank you. Next term is circled game. I see this on my little sports betting app all the time when on the side it says circled game. Tell me what that means, Teddy.
Sure. A circle game, and you'll see this all the time. It has to do, usually has to do with an injury question.
Yeah.
So the books will take lower limits on circled games. Usually half of the maximum bet is the standard for a circle game. And that's a game where there are questions about who's going to play or why. So you'll see that all the time. You'll see it, especially early in the week in the NFL. In basketball, you see it all the time with players who's going to play and who isn't. When a game's circled, that means there's a significant injury question, and you're not going to be able to get as much down. The Knicks-Bulls game was circled because they didn't know if Markkanen was going to play.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. This next term, pretty important to know. Cover. Teddy covers. Cover. What does that mean?
Well, they only call me Teddy covers when I win. Then otherwise they go Teddy doesn't cover. And nobody likes Stefanski. Stefanski just does not roll off the tongue the same way. So the Teddy covers nickname is one that I was blessed with, and I've enjoyed over the years. To cover means to cover the point spread. Okay, and to cover the point spread means either you're winning, the favorite, the chalk is winning by more than the point spread. They're laying -4.5. They win the game by 6. They covered the spread. Similar story with the underdog. The favorite's -7. They only win by 3. The underdog covers the spread. So to cover means you win the bet. I was praying for the 49ers to cover in the Super Bowl, but Kansas City just had too much.
Yes. Good times, good times. All right, next term, dime. How much is a dime, Teddy?
Well, let's start with this. That Super Bowl was a great game. I don't know what you were more
Oh my God, it was such a great game. I said it was a great time. I said good times. It wasn't sarcastic.
No, it sounded like you remember. When I say good times like that, I'm thinking about my bet on the Falcons when they led 28-3 against the Patriots. Good times. Yeah. But no.
Yeah, that was awful.
Chiefs are all good. A dime is as simple a term as there is. All right, there's two basic betting terms, nickel and dime, when it comes to how much bets, the size of the bets you're making. A nickel is to win 500. A dime is to win 1,000. So a standard 11 to 10 bet. You're actually betting 1,100 to win 1,000. That's a dime bet. But a dime better is $1,000 better. A nickel better is a $500 better. So I bet 3 dimes on the Clippers, and they didn't cover by a half point. Worst day of my life.
Perfect. Dog. Woof.
Yeah, a dog is the underdog. There's a favorite, there's the chalk, and then there's the dog who is, in theory, supposed to be the weaker team or the team facing whatever kind of scheduling disadvantage if it's two comparable teams. But the dog is simply the lesser of the two squads. They'll be catching points in football and basketball. They'll be at a plus price in baseball. So the dog is less likely to win the game straight up. They're still, over the long term, 50-50 to cover the point spread. So I bet the dog, and they got blown out. Not a good day.
Not a good day. All right, number 13. We're like halfway there. Edge. What does it mean to have an edge, Teddy Covers?
Yeah, take a breath, man. Halfway there. The funny thing is, for most of these pods, I make sure I'm going to go through the list and whatever we're going to talk about. There's always some research with these. With this one, I just went down. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not a complete idiot and don't know what any of these mean. But it's not like one of these days where I'm like, oh, I got to do a bunch of research on these. This is a fun one for us. It's not, I got to sit down and do a ton of work beforehand. And these are terms that everybody wants to be using. So what's the term I'm supposed to talk about right
terms.
Here? Yeah.
Oh, edge, yeah.
Edge, yeah. So this is and of all the terms I'm supposed to know, edge is the most important one, flat out.
Okay.
Because your edge is whether you have a positive expectation of winning these bets or a negative expectation. Edge is any additional factors that come into play that aren't necessarily related to the point spread. They can be related to the point spread as well. Edge really is any advantage that you have. Your edges can include the markets aren't reacting to something that you see as a huge factor in this game. You can have an edge. The point spread opened +4. I grabbed it. Now it's down to +2. You have an edge because you have a +4 in your pocket. Anytime you have anything with a positive expectation, that is an edge in your favor. And when you talk about beating sports, there's a quote from the dear departed Dave Malinsky it's truly, there's one sentence how to beat sports betting. It's this sentence: little edges over time. That's what sports betting is. You're not going to have huge edges, but you are going to find little edges. And over time, if you continue to bet games where you have a little edge, you'll make a profit long term. That's how it works. I had an did I give a sentence already on this?
Everything you've used in a sentence already.
Well, here, let's go. So I thought I had a huge edge because the Mets used their entire bullpen last night, but the Syndergaard came in and pitched a complete game shutout, and they didn't need their bullpen at all.
Heck yeah. Perfect. Beautiful sentence. All right. Next term, even money, Teddy.
Even money. From a betting standpoint, that's also, you can write that as +100. All right, or EV. Even money just means you bet 100, you win 100. You bet 10, you win 10. Or you plus your 10, you get your $10 back or your $100 back. But it's a bet that's at even money. There's no juice that you have to pay. The juice is on the other side for a bet like that. So oftentimes you'll see for key numbers in football, instead of moving it off of a 3, they'll say, all right, 3 this side, -3, -120, +3, even. That means just at +100. It just means that you have to lay bigger juice on the other side, and no juice with the and it's not a pick'em. A true pick'em is -110 either way. Even money is even money.
Even money.
So I didn't have to lay any vig on the 49ers because it was the juice was at even money.
Even money. Perfect. And now the next, it is. I understood it.
Yeah, but you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, a little bit, a couple years.
Yeah. So I bet the Chiefs' future at even money prior to whatever, and they ended up winning.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Number 15, the opposite of underdogs, the favorite. Teddy, is there any more you can explain favorite other than opposite of underdog?
Well, sure. I mean, the favorite is the team that is mathematically supposed to win the game. Now, as we know, you can be a short favorite, -1 or -2 in a football or basketball game, -120 or -130 in a baseball game. Those are short favorites. They have a little bit of an edge. You can be a huge favorite. In college football, you see 45-point favorites, 50-point favorites sometimes. In baseball in August, you see -$4 on the, when the Yankees are playing the Royals or whatever. I mean, it's not unusual to see big favorites, and you can find there is value with big favorites sometimes.
Yeah,
I always come back to the Mayweather-McGregor fight. Where Mayweather was -$4 at close, and everyone I knew was that it's the best value I've ever seen. Mayweather, McGregor has no chance in this fight. Bet as much as you can on Mayweather, even at -$4. To lay $4 to win 1. But the favorite is the team that's supposed to win the game. They're priced
higher
in the betting markets. When we talk about money lines, you have to lay more than 11 to win 10 with the favorite. When you're talking about point spreads, you're laying points with the favorite as opposed to taking points with the underdog. The Chiefs were the favorite in the Super Bowl over the 49ers, and they ended up winning and covering.
Yeah. Next term is first half bet. What is the first half bet, and why would one bet on the first half over the full game?
There are a number of reasons why you would be interested in betting the first half, but let's start with what it is. A first half bet is a bet that gets graded at halftime. You either win or lose at halftime, or in baseball, a first half bet is a 5-inning bet. Usually get that. And regardless of whether the second half gets played, regardless of anything that happens, your bet is a winner. It's graded based on the final score of halftime. You can bet sides, you can bet totals, you can bet whatever, but it's not a full game bet. It's a halftime bet, a first half bet. So it gets graded that. Why would you bet a first half bet? In baseball, you bet a first half because you don't want the bullpens involved. You think you have an edge early. In football or basketball, you're betting first halves if you have based on either this is how this team comes out in this spot, or I expect this team to come out this way in this spot. Using in a sentence, you could say something to the extent of, I bet the first half on the Blazers-Lakers game because the Lakers were coming off a loss, and I thought they were going to come out and play like their hair was on fire, and they did, and they led by 20 at the break, and it was a really good bet.
Okay, perfect. Term number 17, future.
A future is any bet that is not going to be decided that day. It's not based on necessarily one game. It can be season win totals for, they offer season win totals for all kinds of things. It can be
or a divisional win,
or who's going to win the division. It can be for who's going to win the conference. It can be for who's going to win the championship in that league. And so a future bet is a bet you're going to make. The books are going to hold the money for a while, but you're not betting on any one particular game per se. You're betting on a team's overall performance, whether it's in the regular season or in the postseason. And betting futures, certainly when you talk about odds to win, odds to win the Super Bowl, odds to win the World Series, odds to win the NBA championship, they're going to have odds on every team available. Only one of those teams is going to win.
Yes.
So there's a reason that those type of odds are prominently displayed in every sports book in Las Vegas right when you walk in the door. They're big money makers for the house.
Yeah.
That said, when to make a score, to make a bunch of money without risking a bunch of money, futures are a way that you can bet a little to win a lot if you can find that one team that's live to make a run as a big underdog. So they tend to be very popular bets. For me, I like the season win totals. I like the over/under season win totals because every team is going to either go over or under or push. It's not like a story where there's one team out of 32 who's going to cash your ticket and every other bet's going to lose. So I prefer the futures when it comes to over/unders than I do to odds to win it all. But you can certainly find the big scores on the future bets for odds to win it all. Here's your sentence. Future on the Chiefs prior to the season, and they won the Super Bowl. I cashed.
Yay. I love it. Number 18, Grand. We talked about this, I think, in our first episode, which was baseball betting. Grand Salami is ultimately just betting on the grand total of all the games of that day, correct?
The total points scored or runs scored or whatever it is for that. Yeah. But you're not betting one game. You're betting the Grand Salami.
All of them.
Yeah.
Grand Salami.
It really is. It's you're betting it's a total bet. All right. You're betting on the total points being scored or over under. Is certainly, another, the proper word is total, but I know a lot of people call them over unders. So it's an over under bet on the number of runs or points scored for the entire card on any given day. That's a Grand Salami bet. I bet the Grand Salami in the NHL last night, and 6 goalies pitched shutouts. It was great. I had the under.
Nice. All right. And next term, handle. We're almost there, Teddy. Almost there.
Are you in a rush? That's the whole thing about this.
I'm not in a rush.
Yeah.
I have nothing but time.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, well, okay, if you have time, can you call in? I'm like, sure, I got time. I got nowhere to be and nothing to do except for this. Handle. And handle is the total amount of bets that a book is taking on a given game.
Right.
So when the handle is higher, it means they're writing a lot of action. When the handle is lower, it means they're writing less action. There's fewer bets. So the handle on this year's Super Bowl broke all-time records. There was more than 150 million wagered in the state of Nevada on the Chiefs 49ers this year. So now it's worth noting, oftentimes in sports books, when you're reading stuff, they're going to say what was the handle and what was the hold. Mm-hmm. The handle is the total amount bet.
Okay.
The hold is what the books got to keep out of that. So if they're going to have 200 million handle, if their hold's only 0.1%, they wrote a whole lot of action. They didn't make any money. If your hold is 10%, you just made a whole lot of money. So big difference between handle and hold. And books, there are books that will be more aggressive in trying to write more handle. They'll offer reduced jupes, reduced vig. They don't mind having less of a hold because they'll write more handle overall. Other books are more concerned about having a bigger hold percentage. They're not worried about how much handle they have. So yeah, the handle on the Super Bowl broke records. There's your sentence. There was so much.
Perfect. And thank you for explaining the difference between handle and hold. Good stuff. Next term, number 20, hedging. And Teddy, not only what does hedging mean, but do you hedge and do you recommend hedging your bets?
And this is a good this is number 20, so it's a good one to end on because hedging is something we should talk about for a minute or two. Mm-hmm. The concept of hedging is you're going to lock in a profit regardless of what happens moving forward. If you have a bet on a team at +3 mm-hmm. and they're up by 21 at halftime.
Okay.
You may say, all right, let's make it they're up by 14 at halftime. All right. I'm going to hedge and bet back the other team at halftime, giving you an opportunity to cash both sides, but ensuring that you're not going to lose anything on this game and the chance you can win more. Now, mm-hmm. The chance you can win both sides. We just talked about future book betting a minute ago. Mm-hmm. The hedging with futures is very common. Yeah. I have the Patriots at 10-1 to win the Super Bowl. And now the Patriots just made the championship game. Your choice is I can hold my Patriots 10-1 bet, or maybe I'll put 1 unit on the Patriots opponent on the money line and hedge off of my New England. I'm still going to make a big profit if the Patriots win, but I'm also going to get something if they lose.
Right. Good.
You're going to make some money if they lose. That's hedging your bet. What you're doing is instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, saying, I'm going to make this huge score. I'm going to cash this 40-1 ticket. When you hedge, you say, I'm going to give away some of that potential profit if they hit 40-1 to make sure I make something if they don't. So I had a Chiefs future to win the Super Bowl. I'm really annoyed that I hedged off it because they ended up winning the Super Bowl.
Yes, love it. Okay. Sorry, I have 2 more terms for H, if that's okay with you.
By all means.
Okay. 21, hook. Here's your sentence. I lose by the hook all the time. Teddy, what is the hook?
A hook is a half point. And when you talk about the betting terminology, the point spread sometimes is -4, sometimes it's -5, sometimes it's -4.5. And you have your minus, or plus 4.5, whatever it is. And your 4.5 point favorite wins the game by 4. You just got hooked.
Yeah.
Getting hooked is no fun. Losing a game by a half point is no fun at all. But again, the more ability you have to shop for lines, the more sports books you have accounts with, the more times you check during the day, hey, well, I looked this morning, it was -3, and I looked in the afternoon, it was -3, but did I look tonight? Maybe I find the -2.5. The more work you put on betting, your betting skills, the less often you'll get hooked, and it really is that simple, but nobody wants to get hooked. No. You want to win the game. You say, I won it by the hook. That's best, but you don't ever say I lost. Sometimes you say I lost by a hook, but most of the time you just say I got hooked. It was the worst.
Yeah. Okay. And our last term of the day, house.
The house is just whoever's taking your bets. All right. Yeah. You're the bettor. There's a bettor and there's the house, and the house can be your local bookie. The house can be an offshore book. The house can be the app on your phone, but it's whatever book you're betting at. So, is it good for the house? When we talk about, oh, it was a great weekend for the house, that means you talk to a handful of sportsbook directors. They're like, yeah, we won on Saturday. We won again on Sunday, So the house is just whatever book or bookmaker you're dealing with, or the aggregate, all the bookmakers. How did the house do this weekend? Well, the books did pretty well. Pretty close decision.
Got it. Beautiful. Teddy, thank you so much. That was our betting terminology A through H. We'll do a couple more next week. That concludes our episode of Betting 101 for this week. Tune in, same time, same place, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do not forget to subscribe to WagerTalk TV on YouTube and click the little bell icon to get notified whenever we go live. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Teddy. Stay safe and have a great week.
Cheers.